Haiti's president assassinated at his home in Port-au-Prince. Hello, I'm Anand Naidu, and this is The Heat. Haiti's president has been assassinated at his home in Port-au-Prince. President Jovenel Moïse was being killed during an attack at his private home in the capital, Port-au-Prince. His wife was also shot but survived. President Moïse has led his country since taking office in 2017. For weeks, Haiti has been coping with protests and demands for his resignation in one of the world's poorest countries, plagued by gang violence. In 2017, correspondent John Zarrella met with President Moïse in Haiti, and we begin with his report.
I've been covering Haiti on and off for about 35 years now, and I can tell you that I've seen the dictators come and go, going all the way back to Baby Doc Duvalier, the U.S. moving in with armed forces in the early 2000s to stabilize the country, to bring Jean-Bertrand Aristide back into power, president who was deposed and a president in exile. They have gone through so much turmoil over the years, but that all pales in comparison to what happened in the overnight hours. Now, you know, I spent some time with the president, with Moïse, just about in 2017, and it was just after he had gone into power. In fact, we took a plane trip with him up to the north coast of Haiti, where they were working on some agricultural projects. One was to build roads, build irrigation canals, because his history was he was a banana farmer at one time before he became president, and he always spoke about his strength and the issues with the old military and how they wanted to dissolve that old military. In fact, he talked about it with me in an interview we did with him in the palace.
Me, I've been courageous since my campaign to talk about the army, not the old army we knew who used to instigate coups, who used to use violence against people. We're talking about a professional army where young professionals are trained to help face natural disasters to secure our borders.
You know, that small army that they had hoped to put together never really amounted to anything. And, you know, as you mentioned, the gang violence there has really just about taken over the country. And when I interviewed Jovenel Moïse, it was right as the United Nations peacekeepers, the MINUSTAH as they were called, were about to leave the country. And he was very concerned, very worried that they would be moving out too rapidly and that they would leave the country with a void. Those UN peacekeepers had been there since the earthquake in 2004 and really kept a lid on gang violence and on other issues that were certainly a big problem in Haiti over the years. But once they began to leave, you could see that eventually things would just deteriorate. Jovenel Moïse himself in 2020 disbanded the parliament, asked for another year as president. So things were devolving quickly in Haiti. So while this is a terrible shock, a terrible surprise that this would happen, in some ways, it doesn't surprise me because of Haiti's long history of horrible violence and one president or dictator after another going in there and nothing really ever being done to bring this country out of the woes of desperation and poverty. It is without question one of the poorest countries in the Western Hemisphere.
That was John Zarrella reporting there. Well, there is much to discuss, and joining me now from New York is Macollvie Neel. She is managing editor of the Haitian Times. Also with us here in Washington, D.C. is DeCady. He is an attorney and a leader in the Haitian Diaspora. Joining us too is Firmin Backer. He is co-founder and president of Haiti Renewal Alliance. And also with us is Ives. He is a journalist and editor of the weekly newspaper Haiti Liberte. Welcome to all of you to the show. Macollvie Neel, let me start with you. This assassination took place at the president's private residence. The interim prime minister has issued a statement in which he said that a group of attackers was involved. What do you know about the circumstances of this killing? And I would imagine someone like the leader of Haiti would have had some kind of security detail for his protection. What happened there?
Yeah, so that's right. It's just really bizarre that these armed thugs, or commandos, as they're being called, were able to get this close to the president and actually carry out his execution. What that says is that a lot of speculation we're hearing is that it was some sort of inside job, right? That it wasn't something that was spur of the moment, but rather planned with people who were on the inside, being able to just help carry that out. And so we don't know. The investigation is continuing, but it is extremely bizarre that the president of a country, his security detail, would allow something like this to happen to him and his family.
When you say inside job, would that lead you to believe that there was some kind of political motivation in his killing?
I think the overall consensus is that the killing was definitely politically motivated. Now, which actors actually ordered the killing or had it carried out is up for debate, right? The thing with President Moïse is that he had made so many enemies in different places, different sectors of the country, that it's really anybody's guess who would have wanted to see his life end this way, because they felt like Haiti isn't getting what it's supposed to produce at the moment, right? And so that's what the investigators will have to look at. That's what everyone has their eyes peeled for, to just see what comes forward. We do know in an exclusive interview with the Haitian Times that Dr. Reginald had recently with us a couple of hours ago. He came straight out and said it wasn't, him or anyone that he knows in the opposition, because even though Jovenel Moïse had many opponents in different sectors, no one had thought of assassination as a way out of the country. That their debates and adversarial conversations were more about moving the country forward and not really actually hurting people. So it'll be interesting to see who else comes out in the coming days and what we learn about how this attack was carried out inside the president's home.
DeCady, there have been widespread demonstrations over the past few weeks, even the past few months, against President Moïse. Demonstrators have accused him of trying to hold onto power. And there's a bit of controversy over this, because he says that his term of office doesn't actually expire until 2022, while others say that, in fact, it expired last February, and that he's holding onto power right now illegally. He's been ruling by decree. What do you think the motive was, and what do you make of what's happened?
Yes, if you allow me, I'd like to give my sympathies to the wife who's in the hospital, and to the family and to the Haitian people overall for this disastrous situation. Yes, the country has been going to a different level since around 2018, in fact, 2 years ago. Around July 7th, there was the idea of Gridlock, which was surrounded around the Petro-Caribe protest, and that was the starting point of where the protests and a lot of disagreement started with this administration. Recently, the president was trying to change the constitution. And that also mustered up quite a few of opposition on what he wanted to do, and the opposition. The problem is that the sectors in Haiti did not want to sit down and resolve their issues. And I think because of this lack of communication and lack of decorum and leadership and respect for the rule of law, respect for democracy, to actually have election and change election, change the personnel through election, we end up having what we see today, what we saw yesterday, which is the assassination of of a head of state, which we haven't had in the country for more than 100 years. The last time that ever happened in Haiti, although there have been coups in Haiti, had been in 2015. In 1915 was the last time a president was killed while in office. So this is extremely a dire situation and very sad time for our history, for our people, and we all mourn for this president. Even if we did not agree with the president positions, we all have, at the end of the day, he was the head of state of Haiti, and we should all mourn for this loss.
Firmin Backer, what is your assessment of the political situation in Haiti right now? As we just heard from Albert, the president was trying to change the constitution. What did he want? Did he want to extend his term in office?
Well, first of all, let me start by saying that this is a really terrible situation, and this is the in recent memory. This is the first time a duly elected president has been assassinated while he is in office. It's not just in Haiti itself, but also in the Western Hemisphere. We haven't heard that happen really in recent memory. But right now, Haiti is in a political situation where that we are not even sure that who's leading the country now. Although the president wanted to change the constitution, but it's not necessarily to extend his power. It's because that there are issues with the constitution. As you know, that no constitution is perfect. From his the point of view, he figured out the best way to move the country forward is to change the constitution. As a result, he had embarked in this strategy to have a referendum to change the constitution, not necessarily to extend his term, because when he changed the constitution, he would not be benefited from the new constitution. However, that would allow the country to be on a new political structure in order to move the country forward.
Yes, that's right. It was one of his complaints, the president, that the current situation led to gridlock, and he wanted to change the constitution to get things moving. Would that be correct?
Yes, that's exactly, because there's always like a political fighting between the president and the parliament, and the president realizes that too much power was being held by just a group of people in the country, and his hand was really tied as far as like having a good program, a budget for the country, to move forward. Even as simple as nominating of a prime minister was really hard and difficult under the current constitution. So he was trying to make it easier for him to lead the country, not for him per se, but for whoever would become the leader of the country, to lead the country rather than be stuck in the political gridlock that has been plagued the country for such a long time.
Kim Ives, the United States says it's looking very closely at the situation in Haiti and the events over the past 24 hours. The United States, of course, has been involved in Haiti before. The United States military restored one former president to power. It is a country in the Western Hemisphere, not far from the United States. So how do you think Washington will be looking at this?
Well, yes, they're very concerned, and I think that in many ways they're responsible for the situation today. I mean, the past 35, this is really the culmination of the past 35 years of U.S. policy in Haiti, which is a neoliberal policy destroying Haitian agriculture. Haiti was mostly an agricultural society in 1986 when Jean-Claude Duvalier fled on a plane provided by the U.S. To Golden Exile in France. And over that period, they've dumped rice on the Artibonite Valley, destroying the farmers there. They've dumped lemons and coffee and sugar, even sugar has been dumped on Haiti. So this has basically destroyed Haitian agriculture. It's a shadow of its former self. And that is why peasants have left the land in droves and they filled the cities. Port-au-Prince was maybe 500,000 back then. It's now over 3 million. And these are huge swaths of lumpen proletariat. People living, they have no jobs, they have no services, they're living in real squalor. And this is creating a revolutionary situation. And this is what we see, a revolution emerging from the vast bidonville, as they call them, the shanty towns of Port-au-Prince. And this has terrified the bourgeoisie. So our working hypothesis is that the bourgeoisie in some way hired these mercenaries, some combination or one or two, we don't know. But the fact is this was very well financed, very well planned, nothing spontaneous about it. They had the floor plan of the house. They knew where to go. And so it's very clear that this was a professional, sophisticated operation, and we need to now find out who was behind it. But we think, we're hypothesizing now, that the bourgeoisie was so terrified of this movement, the spokesman for which, Jimmy Barbecue Cherizier, said, we're going to go to your banks, we're going to go to your car dealerships, we're going to go to your grocery stores, we're going to take what we need to live like human beings, because we want food, we want schools, hospitals, roads, internet, we want all of the things that a society needs. And I think this scared the daylights out of the bourgeoisie, and they saw Jovenel Moïse had no authority, he couldn't do anything about it. They want to get their people in, they want to get some kind of transitional government in, and ideally, they, I think as a plan B, would like to see a fourth foreign military occupation of Haiti, but there's a big problem with that because the U.S. has declared war on China practically now, and China's going to block it in the Security Council if they try to pull that stunt again. And the Haitian people won't have it either, I don't think.
Macollvie Neel, the interim Prime Minister has declared a 15-day state of emergency. What can we expect now? I mean, there are fears of instability, of more unrest in the country.
Yeah, so before I go to that, I wanted to add something to what Ives said, and it's that the violence that we've seen come out of Haiti in the past year, especially in the past few months, hasn't only hurt the bourgeoisie, right? A lot of the victims of the gang activity we saw were people who were the poorest of the poor, the people who didn't know, you know, who have no means to defend themselves, to flee the country, to hire their own private security guards, like we see a lot of the bourgeoisie, you know, go to as their resources. So it's just an interesting way to look at these revolutionary forces that is mentioned, and then actually see who was being hurt day to day with the constant kidnappings, right? The setting aflame different towns, the massacres we've seen in Cité Soleil, in Bel Air multiple times, and most recently in Martissant. These are not neighborhoods where the bourgeois reside. These are where regular Haitians, the people who are living in these bidonvilles, actually call home. So it begs the question, you know, who was all this violence benefiting at the end of the day? And so when the investigations, you know, reveal who was behind what and what comes to light, then we'll have a more, a clearer picture of what actually occurred on the night of, and who was actually behind it. So now to your question about Haiti being under siege, I think you're asking what's on everyone's mind, and that's, you know, is this the beginning of a new crisis for Haiti? Is this what we're seeing is the lowest of the low that Haiti has hit, right? And that's what a lot of Haitians woke up to, like, wondering this morning when they heard the news, like, how much further, how much lower can Haiti get? Like, every time, you know, there's an attempt to try to, like, get us out of the morass, we have to deal with something like this. And to, I think, the earlier point made about the last assassination we saw taking place in 1915, it's true, this has been a terrible shock to everyone in Haiti, from our reports on the ground there, our reporters on the ground, and in the diaspora who are just wondering, you know, what's next? You know, we're dealing now with essentially a body without a head. We're a headless state, essentially. And so the next few days are going to be really incredibly crucial.
Yeah.
When we look at who's in power, if the interim prime minister is the one who stays at the head of the country, or if it'll be the new prime minister who was named just a couple of days ago. So all of these, you know, we won't know until we see what happens in the next couple of hours and what decisions are made around which constitution is the go-to document for who becomes the head of state.
Okay, Albert, what is your view on stability in the country right now? And there are fears that there could be widespread violence in the country. Does the government have a functioning security apparatus right now?
Apparently, if they did yesterday, it shows its lack of effectiveness to provide security to even the head of state. In the past week, in the past months, you've seen more manifestations in the street by gang members with armed to the teeth, and the police a few months ago in an operation, they are the one that became the victim rather than the gang members. So security is a big issue, but I think us in the diaspora, we are calling for calm, for people to take this and think and actually take time to digest and find out the details, and as the details are coming out, so we can find out. So exactly who is behind this coup, who is behind this assassination, so that the police can apprehend these people and bring them to justice. We ask for the international community to come to give help to make this happen, and I think that would bring closure to the to the Haitian people that the president was not just dead, and they did find who are the perpetrators, and they are apprehended and given to justice. Now, if that is not done in an efficient manner, I'm afraid that the country might end up getting into a situation where there are reprisals, and in that situation there will be more victims. And this is where I would ask for calm, for people to really think and go to the balcony to think and look at the issue and find solution. This is a time for Haitians to get together and work together and find a solution, not a time for us to go and fight each other.
Firmin Backer, what can you tell us about the general situation in the country right now? We know, as Kim Ives told us a moment ago, that there are tens of thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people who've moved from rural areas into the urban areas. There's a big shortage of food. In fact, there was one report that said that up to 60% of Haitians are now living below the poverty line.
Well, that's another situation also that we are looking at. Haiti facing not only just a political problem, but also an economic problem as well. And as we saw, because of gun violence that have been plaguing the country for like a long time, there've been a lot of looting, a lot of food storage facilities have been looted. That's on top of the situation that's going on here. At this point, based on the charter and based on what I'm looking at, the country seems to be calm. I think everybody is really in a state of shock, because it was not something that they thought would happen, and plus on top of it, people are not used to that in recent memory. But based on what I'm observing, what I'm seeing, people are in a state of shock. They're trying to figure out what happened, what's going on. People have a lot more questions than they have had answers. I mean, obviously, we don't know, as my colleague says, we don't know what's going to happen between tomorrow and the next day. So we do have somebody who's leading the charge now, asking people to keep calm, and we hope that they really communicate together to assess the situation and to give people the comfort and confidence that they are in charge and everything will be okay.
Kim Ives, looking at some of the response in the region, the president of Colombia is calling for the Organization of American States, that's an organization that, as you know, is based here in Washington, to dispatch a mission to guarantee order in Haiti. I mean, what do you make of that? Is there a role here for the OAS?
Well, as Cuba calls it, the OAS is Washington's Ministry of Colonial Affairs, and we know in the past they've been there to basically undermine any president who opposes Washington and buttress any president who has Washington's support. They were very vocal, very energetic in supporting Jovenel Moïse, especially when he joined Washington's campaign against Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro. And so I think for sure they want to get some kind of peacekeeping force in there. They have the problem at the UN of the China and maybe Russian veto, but the OAS, as they used in the Dominican Republic back in 1965, might be used to be the cover for U.S. intervention in the region, and then maybe a follow-on military occupation, similar to the MINUSTA, which stayed in Haiti for 14 years. It was supposed to be there for 6 months, but it stayed until 2017, didn't leave then, and then there was a follow-on till 2019. So I hope we're not looking down the barrel of a fourth foreign military occupation of Haiti in the next couple of months.
Right. Macollvie Neel, I've only got a minute left, but as you said earlier on, the next few days are going to be crucial. How do you see this unfolding? Is there any kind of role for the Haitian military here?
So the Haitian military is an interesting question because I'm not sure that one really exists, right? A lot of the guns that we see proliferating in the country are in the hands of gang members, right? The gangs actually are outfitted more with weapons than the police are. And so it's really, we just have to wait and see. Today, the gangs have been fairly quiet from what, we've heard. And so the streets are completely just blank. People are scared, as different colleagues here have said. And so it's really about coming up with some sort of plan that people can stay calm around and getting an idea of what's next. We really don't know. We'll have to just watch.
Right. And Macollvie, very quickly, are you hearing anything about the security situation in Port-au-Prince this evening?
From what we've heard, everything's just been kind of quiet. Businesses are closed today. Gas stations are completely empty. There's little traffic. Even the markets are closed, right? Which is a big deal to not have a marché day. People are just home because they're holding up, not sure what to expect.
Okay.
We don't know if there'll be more violence overnight or what's coming next. And so that's why we're praying that things stay peaceful and everyone can wake up tomorrow morning to better news than we had this morning.
Okay, and that's where we have to leave it. Thanks to all of you for being with us. Thanks for watching.